Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Gamers Without Borders. It is Saturday, February 5th. This is Test Zero, and with me, as always, star of the one-man off-Broadway show, British as I Wanna Be, Oi, from Pawpad Gaming.
Thank you very much.
And today, we are joined by Lance Corporal Knight, the Critical Marine, Duke CT from Duke CT Lounge, and Kotaro from Gaming on a Budget. How is everybody doing today?
Great.
Doing fantastic.
Well, can't really say that anything bad's going on, so.
That's good. Our first topic of discussion, when Nintendo unveiled the 3DS at E3 of 2010, it was all anybody could talk about, boasting processing power even better than the Wii, which, let's face it, was pretty much showing its age when it was new. So the idea of being able to take something as powerful as current generation consoles with you anywhere pretty much solidified the 3DS as a must-buy portable of 2011. But then Sony dropped a bombshell late last month with the announcement of the NGP, or Next Generation Portable. With this new news, do you think that the 3DS will be facing a lackluster launch due to players wanting to wait for the NGP rather than spending their money on the 3DS? Has Sony effectively stolen Nintendo's thunder?
No. Nintendo is a proven brand. Nintendo has outwitted and out-jumped Sony and almost everything. It is a...
Well, no, when Sony put out the PSP... When Sony put out the PSP, it really was a legitimate competition to the DS and the other Game Boy systems.
But what happened at the end of the day?
Nintendo had
At the end of the day,
dominated the portable.
Hell, I own both, and they're great games on each. Honestly, I can't say that the 3DS NGP debate can be any different. I mean, as long as they both have great games, I think they'll both do fine.
But the problem is the cold gravitas of games. I mean, there's more to choose from. I don't even own the system, but just you have to look at the whole wealth of games there and everything else, and the lack of the original titles on the PSP that really killed it. I mean, you look at all the stuff was always remake, this, that, the other, and honestly, it just slowly died a slow death. And plus, with the whole UMD disaster, it just seems to quantify that, and I think most people are just saying, you know what, we'll just wait for. I mean, they're either going for Nintendo, or honestly, they're waiting for the new the new iToy or anything iPad, because I think Sony has wasted an opportunity. I think they should just get out of the hardware game and concentrate majority of their stuff on their lackluster hardwares and everything else, their main consoles, to really get back to, because most of the gamers right now have been shook with the faith, because with the PS3 and the PSP launch, as much good as they have done, they still lag behind. They are lagging behind, and they have to choose right now to either to really keep doing this whole balancing that, or just say, we're gonna cut this and go straight with this and try to rebrand ourselves to a company that people can look up again. Because remember, around the 90s, 95 till like the PS2 ended, they were on top of the gaming.
I'm sorry, right? I have to.
The PS2 was on top. Was on top since 1995, 96 till what? Until the PS3 came out. They were the PS1 and the PS2.
The PS2 still refuses to die. I mean, the PS2 is over 10 years old. It came out in 91.
It remains my favorite
2001. It still refuses to die because it has such a great fan base, and they're still releasing games for it, I believe.
And the lineup as well. And that's what really started everything else. Price point, lineup, and the games and everything else. With this Blu-ray.
But with the NGP, it's trying to peg itself as not just a game console, but you can also download applications for it. There's also talk of it having Skype, 3D, and touchpad, which is in a different place other than on the main screen, so it doesn't mess up the screen when you use it. Which a lot of people are saying that that's brilliant, but kind of seems inefficient to me. But they've also said that the NGP will cost anywhere between like $400 and I've heard $1,000, whereas the 3DS I've heard like $350 to $250.
Yeah,
the 3DS. So probably the lower price point will be another big.
And that's what killed the PS3, and that's what killed the PSP. Price point. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much good the money is, especially where we are in a recession right now. You can't gouge people like this. And Nintendo, once again, will be smart at this. We'll have a cheaper and better technology than what the NGP will have. So they have everything else.
That is really that. I'm sorry, but they're saying the NGP will have PS3 level technology, and the PS3
But it won't matter. It
arguably has the most powerful hardware out of the current generation consoles.
Which
yeah,
is true,
where's
which is
PS?
right, which is why Sony thought that they could charge so much for it, but they didn't realize that gamers will go for something cheaper if it has better games. Just like the 360 versus the PS3, most of the games that the PS3 can play will also play on the 360. The only thing that makes a difference is stuff that are like
And better
the
online
exclusive, like
community,
Demon Souls, Metal Gear Solid 4, stuff like that.
and a better online community as well. And with everything else with the three, and yet the Nintendo Wii, the lackluster console, it just beat the crap out of both because of a cheaper price point and had people and they went outside of the gaming market. They went outside of it and said these casual people that are just coming into gaming, or people who have lost faith in gaming, are coming back because of that. So you have to look at
You can
that.
compare that to the sale of the DS, which completely dwarfs even the Wii sales.
Seriously, DS has a great library, and in fact, this is actually what kept the PS2 going so strong, and why it's still going strong, because it has such a fantastic library. Really, it comes more down to the software than the hardware, which is, why Nintendo was really on top of their game with the Super Nintendo, which arguably has the best library out of any console ever.
It's also worth pointing out, of course, that the 3DS is actually already out in Japan, isn't it?
No, I don't think so.
I think it's going to be out like in the next couple. I think maybe it's a similar. Maybe
I know
close then.
US release
I couldn't remember whether it was
7.
close or whether it was out. But regardless, I mean the NGP has only really just been announced. That's not going to be out for another year at least, right? And so I think the 3DS is already going to have such a head start, and it's going to have so many games out for it by the time the NGP even hits the shops. So that's not going to help it in any real way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one.
That's true.
And that's what's going to happen, because it's going to be just the same thing. What happened with the PS3 is going to happen to NGP. The graphics are going to look great, but at the end of the day, the price point's like, yeah, the graphics are great, but it's going to hurt my wallet too much. Gaming's already a luxury item, so I don't think if the people who do want to have the money to get it are going to get it, and it's going to be great for them. But at the end of the day, majority of people are going to go for the most cheaper. And well, right now, 3D is the new technology, and people are getting their hard on for 3D and the 3D glasses and everything else. That's just going to be
Speaking of which, on the 3D, actually, what do you guys think about 3D in general in gaming? Personally, I think it's just kind of like motion control in that it's sort of a dead end technology-wise. Really, at the end of the day, it's totally unnecessary. Very easy to immerse yourself in a game without 3D. Looking at things like Bioshock, that game wasn't 3D, and it was one of the most immersive games in the past several years.
The problem with 3D is that even if it's on a flat screen, you would have to really have a sort of wraparound monitor to really get the full immersive experience for it. And then you throw in stuff like motion controls and 3D, and then you do sort of have this almost virtual reality situation. But I think it's very, very early. If the ultimate end is virtual reality simulations, I think we're very, very early in that line to be able to actually do anything like that. Probably not for the next 20 years or so.
Right, but until we actually...
but I think we are getting closer to the technology, because there are people talking about 3D projection televisions, but there's not really an application for it yet.
Exactly.
I mean, they're not there until we get applications and game makers and everything else like motion control and everything else that actually say, you know what, let's do it like a gimmick or anything, for anything like that, but actually make a game revolve around it, like say for Red Steel 2 or say Dash Central or maybe Wii Sports or anything else like that focus motion control.
Let me just say one thing about 3D. 3D does not make anything successful. It's how you are immersed into the situation of the game that makes it successful. Exactly. You don't need 3D at all. It's pointless. It's just...
I also read an article earlier that says that you're able to see things in 3D even if they are in 2D. And seeing them in fake 3D just ends up...
Exactly. Fake 3D, like, I know most of y'all don't know about this. I went to a Wizards game recently, and they had like a 3D opening, and my God, it was horrible. It was the worst thing. It was like, and it wasn't even like real 3D or anything else. It's like a stupid static, like the same type of lights and everything else, and it's horrible. And everything. It just felt it took me away from it. So like just for the opening edition and everything else, the opening start of the game, 3D presentation, which absolutely sucked. And it just seems like if you keep and people say it's just 3D, it's 3D, but at the end of the day, you have to really not only impress, but you have to get immersed. You have to say this actually is here. Like you want to feel and see the characters there. You have to make them feel. You have to make them see them as characters, not as characters, but actually feel that you're a part of the world, not just like, oh, this is 3D.
Well,
Hooray, we're here.
You don't need technology to trick your mind for you. If you're immersed enough, your mind will do that.
Well, not necessarily is immersion necessary for a game to succeed. I mean, there are plenty of great games that aren't immersive at all. Yeah, usually I'll play a game because I want to be immersed into the world, but there are times when I'll play a game just because I want to play a game and because I want to have fun doing it, and I don't really care about immersion all the time. But,
If you look at something like, even Tetris, probably one of
exactly.
the best-selling games ever created that's been ported to like every system out there. Tetris is probably as meta as you can possibly get in terms of games, and it's probably still one of the best received and biggest games that have ever been created.
That's my
that's
point.
not immersive at all.
That's the point I'm trying to make. And really, on the note of 3D, unless it really adds to the game, unless it's the kind of game that could only be made with 3D or is significantly better because of 3D, then it's not necessary. I know that I'm getting a 3DS, but I'm probably going to keep the 3D off for most of the time.
Yeah. It's like if it's not going to be immersive, what's the point?
Exactly.
If it's just there for a gimmick, then what's the point?
Well, let's move on to our second order of business, Dead Space 2. I know always played it. I haven't, unfortunately, since I don't have a fucking job right now, but that's not important. However, perhaps something that's with even more notoriety than the actual game is the horribly controversial ad campaign for it titled "Your Mom Hates Dead Space 2," with the inclination that if your mom hates it, it's clearly the coolest thing ever.
Your mom hates it, so you will love it. What sense does that make?
Well, exactly. It says to me, it's like it's again talking down to its audience, trying to be all cool and edgy, sitting right out in the '90s and everything else, saying, "See this, that, the other." It's beyond. It's stupid. It should. I mean, the way they did it last time, they really played up as a horror. Something was happening and everything else, and it has turned me off of the game. I haven't played it yet. I will probably plan to do it maybe next couple of weeks when I get scrounge some cash together. But the ad campaign, like really, I thought we had outgrown this stuff, man. Just to me,
it's like not only is this ad incredibly detrimental to everything gamers have tried to do in the last few years, and showing them, we've been trying to show people that video games aren't all about violence and gore and raping hookers and then running them over to get your car back, which, by the way, doesn't actually work in GTA. I've tried it. But the thing that really bothers me, the thing that really pisses me off, is the fact that Dead Space 2, just like Dead Space, is an M-rated game. And you cutting off limbs of your enemies in order to kill them. It's intended for adults. But then this ad campaign, it's targeted at teenagers, since these are the only kind of people that would care what their mom thinks about something.
Seriously.
And get it just to piss them off.
I mean, did you say that this was a GameStop released commercial? Because I'm not really paying attention.
No.
This
is actually
by EA.
Thank you for fueling a rebellion.
It was EA, I think, that it was EA themselves that did it. At least it's a step up from the Dante's Inferno marketing campaign. That was horrible.
I fucking love the Dante's Inferno marketing campaign. That was awesome.
Please,
it was brilliant, but it was just horrible in the way it was done. I mean, come on, sending checks to games journalists and telling them that if they cash it, they've fallen prey to the sin of greed, but if they don't, then they've fallen into the prey to the sin of wasting money. It's utterly stupid and just God.
At the end of the day, you have to look at the game in its own merits and the way it's ad campaign, the way it is, and with the negative feedback, everything else. I guarantee you, it's not really good buying and sales and everything else. To me, what my most anticipated purchases are the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Bulletstorm, which to me, I'm surprised that. I mean, I'm happy that they didn't go with that same ad campaign. They just, to me, I think that I mean, something like when you look at Bolsa, it reminds me of like those old like Duke Nukem saying this, that, and the other, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm
It's a ad
surprised they
campaign
didn't
that
go
really
with
can be
that.
used for multiple different games. I mean, if they could probably revisit it for the next really violent game like Bulletstorm, like you said, or something like the company that made Mad World is going to do.
Yeah, I'm surprised they
They're
didn't do
making
that with
another game
Mad
that's
World. I'm
very
surprised they
bloody and
didn't do it with
gory.
Mad World. I mean, seriously. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't do it with Mad World, or they didn't do it with with Bulletstorm. That sort of
Well,
thing.
because I think other companies have more sense than that.
Seriously. I don't even have Dead Space 2, but I've yet to complete Dead Space 1 because it really is not as good a game as others. Like, I much prefer Mass Effect or Resident Evil 4 over Dead Space, but while it's good, it's just not great. And no ad campaign is really going to convince me to buy or not to buy a game more than anything else.
There's been a lot of controversy about marketing M-rated games to teens, but most of the time you can attribute it to the fact that it's just ads that are running on channels when teens might watch it, like MTV between 3 and 6 p.m. when they wouldn't be in school. And you could argue that these games are directed at teens as well, but it's never been so blatantly
It's
given like
blatantly
right to them
obvious, and
because
people at EA should be ashamed of themselves. I
Serious.
mean,
yeah, it's the fact that the game is M-rated. It's intended for adults, and yet you're using an ad campaign that is only intended to appeal to teenagers, people who are trying to rebel against their parents.
Seriously, just
Mm-hmm.
the whole point of it it bewilders me. It boggles the mind that they would do this. Utterly, I'm starting to wonder who came up with this so I could punch him in the gut. Just yell at him, just punch him in the gut for being so stupid.
Oh, are you still there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still here. Well, to be yeah, I mean it's a totally stupid idea. I think you're quite right. Whoever thought it up definitely needs to get found in a ditch somewhere in a couple of weeks. But not that I would ever actually be an advocate for something.
Found
if
in a
you
ditch,
would, you'd be a
unconscious
fool
but
to say it
alive.
publicly.
Well, unconscious but alive. Yes, I think something a little more sensible. In a coma.
Death upon another human being, at least not me.
Yeah. But I mean,
And even if you were, you would be a fool to say it online publicly.
yeah, I mean, it's like you were saying earlier. I mean, the game is rated like M, which is basically what 18 plus,
16
basically.
plus, technically.
16 plus.
Well, no, not
It depends on
17.
your country, yeah.
Well, okay, well, regardless, yeah, but anybody who is over the technical age to be allowed to buy this game for themselves isn't going to care what their parents think. They're not going to care that their parents are going to hate it. As you say, it's aimed at the sort of the 12-year-old market, the people who get their parents to buy, adult-rated games for them so they can play them. And at the end of the day, I mean, the parents probably don't care anymore what their kids are playing as long as it shuts them up for 5 hours. They don't give a shit.
I actually remember a horror story that a GameStop employee said once that a little kid came in to buy Grand Theft Auto, and he was told that he needed his parents' permission. He went out, his mother just poked her head in and said, "Sell him whatever." And he bought it, and then a week later she came back and yelled at the clerk for selling him such a violent game.
Yeah,
exactly. In the end, the parents. I mean, I have a story when I was, a couple of years back. I was at a GameStop, saying, parents like, "Oh, should I buy this?" Like it was like GTA Vice City. I said, "No, you shouldn't buy that." And, and the funny thing is, she bought something else. But the little darling kid will always remember this. Kicked me in the leg because of it. I mean,
God.
Little brat.
The world isn't violent because of video games. Video games are violent because of the world, and it's that kind of attitude that you see in people that's what leads to this kind of controversy. I mean, if everyone could just outright, just go and prove that they can differentiate between real and make-believe violence, which unfortunately a tiny portion of the population can't, which is unfortunate and leads to this whole controversy. But the whole point of a violent video game, well, to me anyway, is escapism, getting away from my real-life pacifist nature for just a few hours.
It's the kind of thing, I mean, just because I'm willing to blow someone's head into 16 bits in a video game doesn't mean I'm going to go out and do it in real life, because I am a sensible, rational human being.
It's pretty. It's like Happy Festival fireworks. You shoot him in the head, the blood sprays all over. It's like, yay! Confetti.
Well, regardless, I mean, I actually wrote a term paper once on the topic of violence and controversy in video games, and just how the parents can be disgusted by this, and not be disgusted by the same thing if it were in a movie. I mean, hell, there's that whole California law that's in the Supreme Court that says that because it's interactive, the First Amendment shouldn't apply.
Which again,
it's just stupid.
It is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Supreme Court seems to be on our side on this one, if more because slippery slope than anything else.
And not only that, I mean, I live in California, so if a law like this were to pass, then it would make selling an M-rated game to a minor, it would make it a crime, which would mean that companies would be afraid to carry them, in the fact that they would possibly end up doing that, and then they'd have a lawsuit on their hands, and they'd have to pay a fine, and then they'd have to worry about
shopping
that.
for
And
games,
that would be the
not
decline of M-rated games like that. Although I suppose if you're selling them online with you require a credit card, it would prevent kids from being able to play them.
But not necessarily. I bought M-rated games using my credit card.
You can buy the stuff online. And with PayPal, you could do that easily. I mean, I can do that with PayPal or credit cards and everything else. And the main thing is, the most important thing is what the court and the person who's the people are forgetting the agitators is that at the end of the day, it's the parent. It is always the parent that says they should be with their kids looking at these games, following what they should be doing, looking at everything else like that, and try to be monitoring them, doing what parents did. And if they are going to get a violent game, everything else, talk to them, tell them that this is violent, but it's not real. Let them, try to say, be a parent. That's what I'm trying to say. Monitor the assess, make sure they're not going to do any violent acts or anything else. If it makes them violent, stop them from playing the game. If it's not going to do it, not going to make them violent, then, make sure, be there when they're playing the game, watch them, or, heck, in Gears of War 2, there was a thing that actually switched off saying, okay, switch off the blood and gore. Game makers are making this leap. The parents have to make that leap as well. And I realize that because my parents did the same thing.
And it can't just be left up to the game developers. The parents have to at least meet them halfway.
Seriously, be a parent. Don't just leave your kid to do whatever and then react. Actually, be proactive.
And then it's everybody else's fault when they turn out to be some freak when you didn't notice the signs.
Yeah, although admittedly there is kind of a flaw in this argument in that protecting a child from all this violence and such right up until they're 18 is Faustian and deforming, in that they won't be prepared. But yeah, honestly, my personal philosophy is expose it to them just a little at a time. Don't do it so much that they'll be desensitized to it, but enough so that they'll get used to the fact that, okay, yeah, this kind of stuff really happens. And
not everything is fair. Life is not always fair, so they have to learn this stuff. Sometimes, you see this kind of stuff on the news.
Yeah, the news is more violent and violent than any movie, any TV show, any video game. I can point to stuff on the news and point to stuff on on public record that are horrifying. And everything else like that. So I just don't get, video games are so violent, but yet the reality of it is much, much worse, much more darker.
That this stuff actually exists. And in fact, on that note, there was that news thing recently where a guy accidentally killed his 4-month-old daughter because she was crying while he was playing a game. And obviously the media jumps more on the fact that it was because he was playing a game than this is a guy that was obviously very psychologically disturbed, because, you would have to be to do something like that.
Or, the people from the Combine, we now know it wasn't because they were, bullied or anything else. It wasn't because they were, shut video games and everything else. We realized they were just people who are really mentally disturbed, people who are just not there in the head. And, you got to realize that, there are people out there who are not right, who do harm, and there's no real rhyme or reason for that. You have to realize that.
In fact,
it's not because of video games. It's not because of everything else, these outside factors. It is sometimes
I believe the outside factors can mean something. I mean, the kids at Columbine, they were teenagers. They had the same problems that other teenagers had.
They just
They had the
reacted
same kind
differently.
of things that people
Very
coming in,
reactive, very
not
violently and
talking to them,
differently.
people being just not being friends with them, people that didn't want to deal with them, people that ostracized them and alienated them, and then eventually they had enough and they decided to just destroy everything that the world stood for, and this was their action against that. It was the logical course of action for them, maybe not perfectly logical in our sense, but they felt that this was what they needed to do,
But
or
Exactly.
at
yeah,
least what they
it
wanted
is.
to do. This is how they wanted to go out.
But I always look at this: if violent video games and these things and movies and everything else are so apparent in the young and young groups and the teenage and everything else, why aren't there like thousands upon thousands of school shootings?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Why aren't there more people losing their minds and
There are
such?
millions of people playing video games, and there are only a tiny, tiny handful of people that are reacting badly about it.
I actually,
Exactly, and it's
yeah,
always the squeaky wheel. It's always the 1%, which in every case, it's always been the case. You look in history, it's always the 1% of the people who are actually acting like complete a-holes are the ones screwing up for everybody, and we have to be
yeah.
louder and the responsible ones to say, listen, gaming or what have you, or interactive mediums, or whatever term we have, um, let us, this is not what we are. This is what we are. We are a community of caring people and smart people with regular jobs, families, friends. We are not 30 to 40-year-old shut-ins who live with their parents and have no job and live off welfare. We are more than that. We are students. We are your teachers. We are your, people like, we are your police officers, that sort of thing. We
Yeah,
have
my high school
We are
history teacher
we
loved
are your
Halo.
military, as Knight would be able to about vouch.
Yes, yes, indeed. Freaking, uh, there's some cases in the military as well about people being coming out and saying, like, I know that there's a whole bunch of people who protest the Marine Corps itself just because of a couple idiots doing something really stupid, like killing a woman and burying her in her backyard as a statement to one thing that happened 2 years ago,
Or that
or
thing with the puppy that went viral
oh
online.
yeah,
Yeah.
the puppy being thrown off the cliff. Yeah, there's that.
Yes,
There's also
and it's always the one. Like I said, it's always the one thing people will latch on and cast group aspersions of whole, and it is wrong. We can't because we can't be a society to want to keep pushing forward. We have to keep evolving to something better. Is that we can't keep doing this because it's always going to trip up. Because if we keep doing this like 1%, we gotta look at that 1% without looking at the whole. We're never going to move anywhere. We're
Well,
going to be stagnant for the rest of our
yeah,
existence
but
here.
just think, if you will, for a moment, if there was a guy in a school shooting who loved cooking, would they then start saying that cooking makes you violent? No, they target gamers because we're a relatively new group. Well, compared to most others.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. It happened, and even this, it even went back to like Dungeons and Dragons. It went back to comic books. There was a movie, or there was a book that came out about this guy who compared the various comic book heroes to psychological disorders, and that people that were fans of these superheroes suffered from these psychological disorders.
But I don't think it's going to happen that big because we have the internet. We have local. They didn't have comics in the 50s and such. Did not have the mass media we have right now. We have multiple people. Not only hopefully the U.S. got the Supreme Court on our side, but also there's multiple of us. The internet. We have these podcasts we're doing right now. We have a lot of information for people right here, and the crazy cannot an uninformed person is dying out every day, and we cannot sit. I mean, we cannot be worried about that. We have to press on. We have to inform the people because if we keep informing them, the chances of anything like that happening is gone. Because remember, Jack Thompson was a big threat. But now look at him. He's a disembarred lawyer in Florida acting, that sort of thing. Crazy. So, I mean, if we
Amen.
could take down Jack Thompson, we could take down these guys here, and we can present gaming or this interactive medium as a better position. We could be more of a positive and more of a not detriment, but more of a positive outlook, saying we're for everyone here, not just for certain shut-ins and everything else.
You know what's kind of sad about this whole thing? I am sure that our generation is going to be doing this exact same thing to the next generation.
As always, I mean, that's the thing.
It's a pattern.
It's a pattern.
It's horrible that this happens. I mean, yeah, it's honestly, this is one of the worst things that is a recurring generational thing. Every generation picks on the next generation's new medium due to fear, and it's irrational fear. I mean, seriously. I sometimes want to talk to the people who are against video games and tell them, you guys were into rock music. Your parents said the same thing about that. There's no difference here.
And I think it's just, again,
we should move on.
Yeah, that's. I think we should move on because I think we'll just keep talking in a circle here.
Yeah, we could go on. Yeah. We could go on to this for hours. I mean, we went into it in the pilot episode as well. So,
yeah.
Okay. Our final topic for this afternoon is DRM, or Digital Rights Management, for those of you who don't know what a rootkit is. Well, copy protection is nothing new. They've had games like in the 1980s and early 1990s that would ship with a special card that forced you to answer a question that was contained in the book. And if you got it wrong, the game would punish you. Most of the time, it just wouldn't run. But in other cases, it would actually kill you, or it would make the game just impossibly hard, like not letting you level up. But in recent years, there's been a resurgence of DRM concepts with the loss of the physical copy. Since you can't just put the disc in the game to prove that you own it, companies are being forced to take other practices, let's say.
And some of these are...
So now you have this stuff like in Assassin's Creed 2 that forces the player to connect to EA servers just to run the game, even if they're not doing the online play in it.
And to me, I think a lot of people who have talked about this subject, I think if you ever heard of the program Extra Credits over at theescapist.com, actually talked about this subject. And I think this is a really interesting subject because the same is happening in the consoles and somewhat. You have people that are renting games and everything else. Having Mass Effect. I just have like Mass Effect 2. Rented. Used copy, and it's just I can't get Service Network and everything else. It seems like you're being punished for playing a game which you should not be. You should not be punished
exactly
for playing a game, and again this bridges a gap between, and I understand piracy is a problem. Piracy needs to be resolved because the people who do pirate these games because there are some legitimate reasons, like you can't physically buy the game anywhere. I mean, something like that. I say if you can't buy the game like from like a store or anything else, you can't buy it online or anything else like that, then I think you have legitimately no choice but to do that. But I think for right now, for people who just say, "Oh well, it doesn't matter to me," like it's only like $50. Don't get. They have 500 people doing it.
They have the right to that $50.
They have that. They work for it. I mean,
seriously.
They worked.
But the whole thing with this DRM is it's ridiculous. I was playing Assassin's Creed 2 just recently, and their servers were down for scheduled maintenance, so I couldn't play the game at all.
If it was scheduled maintenance, why couldn't they schedule it for a time when less people would be doing it, like at 2 a.m.?
Exactly. The game was down like all day until like 10 in the evening.
And that's gonna really piss off people. How many people took back their games because of that? Said we're done. We're gonna sell it off. I mean, how much lost revenue? I guarantee you from people online on their servers and everything else like that. I mean, there's going to be because there is going to be a cutoff point for this because people are going to say, well, we have enough. We're not going to. It's going to keep bridging. It's going to keep widening this gap, and it has to be some type of bridging, saying, okay, we have to have this DRM, something to be like, okay, to stop this piracy, we're going to have, okay, if you buy the game. Or say you buy a pre-order and anything else, you buy a brand new copy.
Add in extra content for the people who bought it legally.
Yes, you will have extra content, and you can host it on other servers like Assassin's Creed 2. You can have Brotherhood. You can host it on other servers if you bought the game legally and everything else. You can host it on other different servers. If you have rented or anything else, you will only be on restricted for the EA server. You know, that sort of thing.
You know what I
And
think? You know what I think? I think DRM actually encourages piracy because then the pirated copies, you don't have to deal with this DRM. You don't have to jump through
Yeah,
all
it's
these
like, I mean,
hoops.
the only people that are being people who buy it legitimately, people who bought this game from a store or from Steam
They're the
or
ones being
games from Windows
punished.
Live, they're being treated like criminals. And then the
Seriously.
people who actually are criminals, the people who actually are pirating these things, are sitting there happily enjoying their DRM-free games because they took the effort to get rid of the crack, to use the crack and to get rid of the DRM on it. So
Exactly. I
the
mean, I've
pirates are
pirated
enjoying.
games before, but I'll also buy it legally. I mean, there have been games where the DRM is so draconian that I'll buy a legal copy, but I won't play it. I'll play a pirated version that doesn't have the DRM. So I feel secure knowing that I gave them the money they deserve, but that I don't have to deal with this DRM regardless. In fact, a friend of mine had a horrible experience recently when he bought Dead Rising 2 through Steam. Because of the DRM built into the game, he had to run the game through Games for Windows Live through Steam. So he has two clients running at the same time as the game, and the game was slowed to a crawl. So it's just ridiculous.
And this used to be relegated simply to PC games, but now they're starting to do it with console games. The recently a downloadable Xbox title, Bionic Commando Rearmed. This is a game that I was actually really looking forward to, but now there's news that it's forcing the game to connect to the internet just so you can play it when the game has no online component.
that is crap, and it really does. So it's going to keep verging a gap between the fans and new players. I mean, how is it going
Seriously.
to be when some guys say, "I want to play this game," but it's getting to a pain in the ass, and eventually we'll have bad PR, and we're going to be in the same situations and such. We have to. I mean, the companies need to look and say, we have to make our consumers happy. And I know you don't want to make the pirates because all they're doing is making the pirates look good, and that's they don't want to do. The pirates are saying, "Hey, they're screwing you with this." All we can do, which we just come over here, just pirate the game, you'll be just fine.
Well, the
That's
people that cracked the
Exactly. I mean,
Assassin's
yeah,
Creed 2
it's
DRM were
making
saying that
piracy
they were just
looking
trying to
like
make
the
people's
better
lives
option.
easier by, not forcing them to connect to the internet. So as they said, you made it, that they said that it took them a month to crack it when it usually takes about a week to crack DRM. They pretty much said to the company, it took us longer than usual. You gave us a hard time, but, we don't want to encourage piracy by cracking this. We just want to make people who bought it legally, we want to make their lives easier.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be some sort of a message sent to these companies. I'm not one to call a boycott or anything, but something that says that you would prefer to play a DRM free game. Like, I know Kataro, you said you bought a game specifically because there was no DRM on
Yeah,
it.
the Prince of Persia reboot. It's a good game, and I enjoyed it, and I think people should buy it anyway. But if you're going to get it, even though it doesn't have the DLC on the PC version, get the PC version to send them a message. Hey guys, I bought your game because it doesn't have any DRM on it. Thanks.
yes,
And then
and
we would have to make a two-pronged attack and say that games that do have DRM, I mean, they did this a lot with the Spore series when the Spore had a really terrible uh, Sekirom
The Sekiro
oh yeah,
Sekirom
itself actually
protection.
isn't bad. I'm starting to miss the days when all that they had was Sekirom, when the only DRM was that you just needed to put the disc in when you wanted to play, and that was it.
and that should be
Miss that.
simple. That and I have no
Yes, yeah,
problem with
but
that.
what they have now is even worse.
Hmm.
Um,
It's just that we it's frustrating, and when you look at it, and you know what, that this format that actually is a good idea. They say that if you want to play this game, you just put the disc in, and that's it. That
well,
would be a
admittedly, you
good
can't
idea.
do that with downloadable games, but
Yeah,
with
downloadable games. That's gonna be a
yeah, but
tricky.
when looking at Assassin's Creed 2, for example, I bought it off of Ubisoft's freaking website, and they're still forcing me to verify that it's a legal copy every time I play. And I'm just thinking, really, guys? I bought it off of your website.
And what
And
I like about Steam is that Steam tends to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Right? If you log on to a game on Steam and you're offline, it'll just say, okay, the game will run, but you can't do anything online with it.
Yeah, all it does is disable achievements and such, which, that's part of the reason that Steam is so great. And seriously, guys, anyone out there listening to this, if you don't already have Steam and you're a PC gamer, get Steam. It has some great deals, and I intend to, a lot of the games on my blog, I'm going to be talking about Steam games. Like how you can get all of the Doom games for $35 on Steam, which is a great deal for, 6, 7 games.
Exactly, and I mean, I'm just recently getting to Steam, and I'm like, wow, this is a great community. I mean, it's a great thing, and I think hopefully, because it is seem to be a lot, very successful. It does seem to be very successful
Because it's
and
good and it's useful and convenient and it's a great thing. And yeah, the fact that they give you the benefit of the doubt, Steam itself is sort of DRM, but they do give you the benefit of the doubt. You can still play the games offline, which is
and
great.
yeah, and that's going to be, and it's going to get, at the end of the day, it's going to be a financial thing because EA and you guys say, you know what, maybe we got to adopt this Steam because we're getting too much negative press, we're getting too much of bad PR about this situation, so they're going to have to keep going on, keep getting the bad PR, or they're going to say, you know what, screw it, we're just going to put in the way Steam does it, or maybe even be better than Steam or like that, because I think that's going to be the eventual outcome of this.
In the end, what's best for the consumer is best for the company.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's just finish up and just say what games we've been playing recently. Let's just go right down the line. Start with Oi. What have you been playing recently?
Dead Space 2, mostly. Good game. If you're a fan of the first game, it's pretty much exactly the same game, with a few tweaks for the better. Mostly that. Who's next?
Todd or Knight?
Let's see here. It's been quite a while because I don't get a lot of time to play video games. In fact, the last game that I can think of was Duck Hunt at the arcade cabinet at frickin' Magfest. And before that,
That's awesome.
I made it up to level 15. I don't know if that's an achievement or not, but anyways, freaking. And then before that, it probably was Medal of Honor for the Xbox. And
I kind of find that interesting because a lot of the people in the military play military shooters, which kind of seems like if you do that kind of thing, you would want to be
Yeah,
away
it
from
seems a
that.
bit
But I'd
redundant.
imagine the real military
It
isn't
does.
quite like
like,
the modern warfare stuff.
like, they do it all the time. Why don't you need to play the video game version
I
of it?
honestly don't understand.
oh,
the
that's a
appeal
great
of
stereotype
most
right
of these
there.
recent first-person
Well,
shooters.
I
They're
mean,
all
I'd imagine that it's not quite like it. I'd imagine that because I know the Onion did a video about the Modern Warfare 3 where there's just a lot of standing around waiting for your orders.
Yeah, I haven't had a rifle in my hands for the past. It's almost been 3 years. So yeah, thanks.
One thing I don't understand and probably never will understand is why why they've been selling and why they've been successful all these samey grayish brown RPG element first person shooters now.
Because you constantly hear about all this stuff in the news about the war in Iraq and the Middle East,
And
then
stress
get
and
these
people
people in
like,
the
you
news,
know,
and they make it
Let's
sound
just
like
look
this
at how
awesome thing,
well
and they tell a lot of these stories about it.
Let's just look at how well Call of Duty Black Ops has been selling. When honestly, anyone who's an old fan of Call of Duty would know that the series started going downhill after Finest Hour, and that Finest Hour was the last great Call of Duty game.
Well,
I
Call of
like
Duty
Modern
is also
Warfare.
very well advertised. You don't see ads for games at pretty much at all on
Yeah.
TV, and when you do, it's these really huge titles like Dead Space 2 or Call of Duty Black Ops.
Or Modern
And
Warfare
that's what
2
sells
or
it
anything
so
else.
well because
Personally,
there's so much advertising for it.
yeah, because, the last great Modern Warfare for me was Modern Warfare 2 because I remember that scene with the nuclear bomb. Like, that was probably the best way of having, like, symbolism in the game. Much, and a lot more, a lot more, and it touched me a lot more better than that little fake ass little airport thing, which was in
No
the
Russian.
sequel. No Russian, which
Mhm.
was a very big important plot point and everything else in the game. But compared to say GTA or anything else, I mean, having shooting civilians is not really passe to me. And when I looked to say Modern Warfare 1, when you saw the nuclear bomb, there was no dialogue or anything else. All you saw was like big nuclear cloud, and a soldier crawling out trying to survive and
That was
living
the
his
only
last
moment I
moment.
liked in Modern Warfare, because that was a very brilliantly done bit. I hated most of the rest of Modern Warfare, but that bit I genuinely loved.
Yeah,
Anywho,
that took.
Katara, what have you been playing recently?
Well, as I've mentioned, I just recently finished Assassin's Creed 2, and just for anyone who hasn't played it, I know I'm a few years behind the curve, and I know you are if you haven't played it yet, but just seriously, go play it. Great game. Even if you haven't played the first, just read a Wikipedia plot summary. Just play Assassin's Creed 2. It has a mind-screwing ending. I'm not going to spoil it here, but other than that, I've just been playing various indie titles like Eversion or Recettear, because those tend to be pretty good.
I've been playing I've been playing a lot of Borderlands. I've kind of been addicted to that because I realized that it's very, very similar to Diablo, and I was very addicted to Diablo as well.
I actually got
When
a
I
friend
played through
addicted
that
to
a couple.
Diablo, someone who had never played a game before, and I let her borrow Diablo 2, and she became addicted.
It's a
uh,
very, very well done game. And other than that, I've also been playing Twisted Metal Black.
I
Because
remember that.
I
Finally, a
recently
worthy
came up with that, and
sequel
that
to
one's a very good game. I'm planning on doing a full review of that.
Yeah, I remember I spoke with you a few days ago, and you said finally a worthy sequel to Twisted Metal 2.
Yeah.
Except for freaking Minion. It's like, ooh, I'm Minion. I'm the fastest car in the game, but yet I'm also somehow the biggest car in the game, and I need to use a force field now because I'm a big ass pussy. Damn Minion.
Yeah, well, anyway, what I've been actually been playing is, mostly, I got this N64 from MagFest. Been playing Kirby's, uh, like most of the N64 games I got No Mercy, Kirby, the 64, Kirby 64, the Star Wars Rogue Strategy, but also playing some Mass Effect 2 on my Xbox, and on my Wii. I haven't been playing much on it, but what I do, I just finished up. Actually, the last game I did, I finished up the Epic Mickey. Really good game. A
Oh,
bit,
I've heard.
and everything else, but I did enjoy the game, and hopefully they will have. Even though there have been some employment problems over at Junction Point Studios, I hope they do make another sequel. I do want to see Oswald the Rabbit make another game and everything else.
So I guess that finishes it up for us at Gamers Without Borders. We'll see you next time. Until then, this is Test Zero.
Boy.
It's Duke CT.
Kataro.
Hoorah for Critical Role.
Everybody, take care.